So I want to start out and ask you, what is your definition of productivity? Just shout it out. Getting things done. I think that's a shitty definition. It's closer. Right. Well, you might have a different definition by the time we're done. Getting things done. That's what we think of. That's part of the problem. When you say you want to be more productive, here's what I really think you want. You tell me if you agree. I think first and foremost, most of you want to alleviate a guilt you feel of not doing enough in one or more areas of your life and business. Is that true? You feel guilty. You know you should be working out more, you should be eating better, you should be doing more marketing, you should be doing better customer service, you should be doing more training with your technicians so that they know how to serve your clients better. You should be doing things more efficiently and operations, and you should be working on that. So you're doing all those shoulds. As Tony Robbins says, you end up shooting all over yourself. All right? I also think that you want to feel like you're making faster progress or some progress in an area or a thing that you haven't been able to achieve so far. So there's that constant level of frustration. I call it's like a low-grade fever. There's this low-grade fever you have where it's guilt, it's frustration, and you constantly feel it. It's constantly present because you know you're not getting the results you want. See, I don't think it's a to-do. I don't think it's getting more done. I think it's getting more results. And that's what I want you to start thinking in terms of. Not in, did I get my to-do list done? Because you can get your entire to-do list done and still not get the results you want. Is that right? And that's part of the problem. You're thinking of, I want to get more done. I don't want to get more done. I want to get results done. And I want to do it in as short as time as possible. And I think you want to feel less overwhelmed. And if you feel, how many of you feel overwhelmed? I mean, everybody feels overwhelmed, right? It's a choice. So the reason you feel overwhelmed is simply because you're either not handling things in advance, so you're running around doing the whack-a-mole, right? Or you're giving everything in your life the same level of importance. So what do I mean by that? So that phone call that rings, or this small task that is, if you remember what Lips was saying yesterday, he says, it's a nice to have, not an absolute must. You've got to prioritize on what you need to get done, what results you need to focus on. You're giving those 8, 9s, and 10s, or the B's and C's on your list, the same amount of attention, focus, and effort as you're giving the A's. And it's because other people are putting those demands on you. You feel like you should do it for whatever reasons. And that's mainly because you're not clear on your outcomes. You're not clear on what you're trying to achieve. You haven't decided yet what's most important to you. And feeling overwhelmed is a choice. I want you guys to understand that. It is nothing more than an emotion. And I've done this exercise before, so play along. I know you know how it works, most of you. Just for a minute, think about everything you've learned at this conference over the last couple days. And I want you to think of your to-do list when you go back. Think about what is waiting for you when you go back already. Since you've been out of the office, there's things that you've got to get done, right? There's probably some customer service issues. There's some technical projects you need to work on. There's, of course, marketing that you're going to have to do. And then think of all the things you've learned. Think of all the different closing techniques you learned from Tom Hopkins. Think of all the things that you've learned from Nito Cobain that he talked about, the adjectives that you need to describe your business and how are you going to find out how your customers describe you. And then think about what Patrick talked about and talk about and the marketing campaigns I gave you with the cloud and the BDR. I mean, these are really good tools I gave you. And think of all those things you need to implement. Now think about the other things you have to get done in your personal life. Maybe there's gardening that needs to be done, the garage needs to be cleaned out, maybe there's a family vacation that's coming up and you've got a plan for that. Think of all those things. How do you feel right now?
Wonderful.
Crap, it's like terrible, all right? Unbelievable. Unfreaking believable. Now, Forget all that. In your mind, it's like a dry erase board, and I want you to erase it all. And I want you to think of one result that you really want to achieve. Now, if it's a financial result, I want you to picture going into your bank account and seeing the money there, the numbers there, knowing you have it. If it's getting out of debt, you imagine yourself actually having zero debt and maybe a full year's salary that you could live off in the bank as a cushion. I want you to think about a result that you really want. Maybe it's losing weight. Maybe you picture yourselves with abs, six-pack. And not the drawn-on kind, but the real kind, right? So think about that result. Really think about it. Make it brighter. Make it come to life. What would it feel like to get that result? You know you've got it done. Now, how does that feel? Feels a lot better. So, overwhelm is a choice. You are choosing to feel overwhelmed because you choose to focus on your to-do list rather than focus on the outcomes you're going after. I just gave you one of the most profound things I know about getting more done. Because if your life is about getting your to-do list done, you could live an entire life being busier than ever, going crazy, and still not feeling fulfilled. Still not having the physical and emotional and material things in your life that you want. You've got to know, first off, what do you want and what are those outcomes? And be outcome focused. Because we make a mistake and think this is a time management program. I have bought every single time management program there is out there with all, it used to be when I was in sales, it was the planners with the different tabs and 14 different colored pencils and things, and it took you a day to plan because you had to write everything out and erase, and it was difficult. So we think it's a time management problem. It is not a time management problem. This is not a time management problem. Mediocre people think more time is the solution to every problem. Mediocre people think that way. Bill Gates doesn't have more time. Sergey Brin and the founders, Larry Page, they don't have more time. Look what they were able to create. They have the same amount of time as you and I have. It's not a time management problem. The biggest reason you're not getting the results you want, it's lack of sufficient motivation. That's it. Napoleon Hill, one of the first things in the book, Think and Grow Rich, he said all highly successful, wealthy people had is the burning desire principle. That was the number one thing. That's chapter 1 in Think and Grow Rich. If you don't have a burning desire to get the outcomes in your life, to have the kind of money you want in your life, the kind of body you want in your life, the kind of relationships you want in your life, the time to do the things you want to do, it's because that there is no burning desire. You don't have that burning desire. Unless you do have it and you're on your way to getting it. Like you're making progress, you just haven't gotten there yet. But really what we're talking about is a lack of motivation. And Joe, you're going to hear Joe Polish speak later today, and you're going to love Joe. You are going to love Joe. He's amazing. And Joe spent a lot of time with Gary Halbert, who was one of the world's best copywriters. And Gary did some sort of, I don't know it as well. Maybe Joe can tell the story, and he can tell it better than I did because he knows it firsthand. But when Gary was coaching his clients on how do you do direct marketing, say like direct mail, he said, the reason that you're getting crappy results in your marketing is lack of motivation. So I think, and I'm telling the story secondhand, so forgive me, but he would say, you got a kid. Is anyone in here have children? Fred, you do, right? You like them? You love them, of course. So that's kind of a leading question we knew the answer to. So now let's suppose someone kidnaps your kid. Now this is Gary, his analogy. And they say to him, you've got to do a direct mail campaign that works, that gets a result, or the kid loses a finger. And every time you try and you fail, they lose another finger until they run out of fingers and you run out of options. All right. That being the motivation, would you use bulk mail? Would you, he's like, I'd hand deliver it. Right. Motivation. It's now the motivation has gone up and the skills automatically follow. And in life, I think the problem is we're like this low-grade fever is that we get to a point where we're dissatisfied with where we are in life, financially and in our business, but we're not dissatisfied enough to do anything. If you remember back to my opening presentation, one of the things I talked about is people come to me under two circumstances, inspiration and desperation. And both places actually are good, meaning inspiration's better, pull is better. If you're here because you're good and you want to be great, or if you're great, you want to be outstanding, that's the kind of people that are going to get amazing results. But desperation is a very powerful motivator too. And that's when we don't get our shoulds done, they suddenly become musts because life hands it to us, because we didn't have it handled in advance. And that is powerful motivation, but here's the danger. What happens is, and I see this happening in marketing, I see this happening with clients, is that the motivation, the pain is there, and so it drives them to do something, and they start doing all this marketing, and they get these great results, and then guess what happens? They stop, not fail, they stop marketing. Why? The pressure's off. I can pay my bills now. All right, the motivation went away, right? So the key is really, how do you get yourself to keep that pot simmering, to go from desperation to inspiration? And the way you do that is you simply have to raise your standards. You've got to say that, making $60,000 a year or $70,000 a year or whatever it is just unacceptable. You've got to say that 20 pounds, 30 pounds, 5 pounds overweight is unacceptable. It's just direly unacceptable. And when you can get yourself to that place, that's when you'll move. That's when you'll figure it out. And you don't need a fancy planner. You don't need the best trainer in the world. I mean, those things help. And you want to have the right strategies. You don't want to just go running around like crazy and, trying a whole bunch of different things. You want to be smart about it. But when it comes right down to it, if you wanted to lose weight, you don't need a fancy diet. You don't need a special exercise machine. You don't need to wear special clothing. You need Lou Ferrigno to stand behind you and go, run! Maybe Dan the F-bomb with a hammer in his hand. You'll move, right? That's what it's motivation. So a lot of people come here looking for tactics. What's the tactic? What's the thing? What's the trick? That's the easy button. And that's why they never find it, because I gave you all the tactics. I cannot give you the motivation. All motivation is self-motivation. You, in the morning, have to get yourself up at 5 a.m. And that's when it matters, because nobody's looking. We talked about it yesterday. Let me give you an example. Suppose you had your highest paid employee go to a conference, and you paid for them to be there, and you paid for them their travel, and you let them be out of the office so they're not being productive and getting billable hours done. How would you like that employee to act at that conference? Would you like them to go to the Predators game instead of staying for the evening session? Would you want them to go partying real late at night, drinking until 2 a.m., so then they come into the next session in the morning, they're bleary-eyed? Yeah. Don't say yes. That's not true. Don't. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. She said hell no. Okay. Would you want that employee to leave early and say, I'll catch the rest of it at the end? Would you want that? I mean, I'm asking you, would you want if you had a highly paid employee that you paid to go to a conference and be there, how would you want them to act? So do we know which highly paid employee we're talking about here? Okay, that's all I'm going to say. Other reasons that you're not as productive, negative beliefs. There's people who just can't even imagine making 7 figures of income. They can't even imagine it. They're just trying to make ends meet. That's like their motivation. Let me tell you, if that's your motivation, you're never going to get anywhere. If your motivation is, I just want to get by, you're not going to. Poor work habits. They don't have any systems for how they get things done. They don't have a process. They don't have checklists. They don't do debrief to figure out, what do we do right? What do we do wrong? How do we make the process better? They have the wrong strategy, or they have no strategy. They just kind of show up every day for work. They sit down at their computer, and what's the first thing they do? Email. Yeah, of course. That's their strategy. And then they react to whatever shows up that day. Literally, that's their plan. They don't sit down the night before or the week before and decide in advance what are the results, the outcomes I have to achieve this week. Not what I got to get done. What are the results I need to achieve this week, this month, this quarter, this year? Do you guys know that? Sending out a newsletter is not well, let me ask you, is sending out a newsletter a result? No, it's not. It's a tactic to get a result. Is getting your website done a result? No, but it's a means to an end. But what I want you to do is stop thinking about to-dos. I want you to think about results. Lack of systems and process, of course. Again, just show up, good luck, hang in there. So I want to give you my top 10 strategies for extreme productivity. These are the things that I've noticed in myself, that I've adapted and have used. It's a little different. I've given this presentation before, and it's worth repeating. I have changed a few things. The first strategy is one we've been talking about. You got to be very clear on what you want, your goals, and have a strategy to get it, okay? So, again, not task-focused, results-focused. Not task-focused, results-focused. I'm not in the office except for one day a week. I don't manage my team that way. In fact, I don't want to know if they're sitting at their desk or what. Here's how do you think I manage my team? Is the result there? I don't give a crap what they're doing. I mean, I do. I shouldn't say I don't give a crap. But if they're getting the result, they can not pretty much do anything they want, but you know what? If they're getting the result, they're doing the things they need to do. It's as simple as that. Somebody doesn't get a result and be goofing off half a day, sleeping in their office. They just don't. But I manage by results. If the result's there, okay. If it's not, now I'm going to watch your actions. Now I'm going to see what you're doing. But if the result's there, I think the person who mops the floor should choose the broom. They should be, as long as the result is there, how they get there with some guidelines, of course, honest, ethical reason. Within reason, I'm not going to micromanage unless they need coaching, and then we need to look at what they're doing. Ultimate success formula, and again, I'm going to give Tony Robbins some credit here. I learned this from him. But first off, if you want the ultimate success formula, how do you get anything you want? Number one, you gotta know what you want. When I sit down with clients and I'll say to them, one of the first things, if you've had calls with me, I'll say, what's the number one thing you're hoping to get out of this call? Have anyone ever been on a call with me where I've asked you that question? It's the first thing out of my mouth. What is, and even when they email me in advance, I make my clients tell me in advance, tell me what we're going to talk about. So they're prepared, I'm prepared. What do you want to get out of this call? You got to know what you want. Before we sit down with a staff meeting, what are we trying to achieve here? Before we do a product launch, what are our goals? What are we trying to achieve here? We got to get really clear on our outcomes. Next, you got to take massive action. You can't take weak action. If it's an important goal and you've decided it's an important goal, you've got to take massive action. And then number 3, which is what Patrick talked about yesterday, is you got to pay attention and notice if it's working. See, that's what most people don't do. They set goals, they start taking action, but then they never check in. In fact, most people don't even know what profitability they had in their business until their guy does their tax return in April the next year. How in the hell are you going to run a business if you don't only find out that you lost 20, 30, 50, 100 grand when your tax guy tells you? How can you drive a car 80 miles an hour looking in the rearview mirror? You can't. You got to notice if it's working. You got to pay attention, and then you adjust and you go again. You adjust your course of action. All saying, am I getting the result or am I not getting the result? Am I getting the result? If I'm not getting the result, I've got to change what I'm doing, and sometimes it's not a tweak. You can't multiply 0. So if you're getting 0 results, then the whole methodology's got something's wrong. Something's wrong, and often it takes drastically different things that you have to do, a different mindset, a different approach to get that result. Number 2, you've got to control your environment, and you've got to set yourself up to win. I've got this weird thing that I do when I'm on a diet, right? Which, by the way, I'm changing my vocabulary around that because diets are painful and horrible and difficult, but I'm changing it to this is the way I am. This is not like a diet because that implies that I'm only going to do it for a certain amount of time. all right? If I think that way, then I'm always looking to cheat the diet. No, see, that's bad language. That's saying that I'm only going to do this temporarily and it's going to be difficult. I'm going on a diet. What I say is this is the way I am. I'm fit, I'm lean. I get on the scale and there is a number that I will never go past. That's it. If I start going, man, then I'm on the spin bike every day until I lose it quick. But I'm monitoring it. I'm not waiting until my pants don't fit. It's a lifestyle choice now. This is the way I am. I incorporate it into my psyche, into who I am, okay? But I have to control my environment because when I'm cutting back, let's say, and I have to make some adjustments, I can't have anything in the house that is temptation food. And when I'm hungry, everything's temptation food. It's sort of like, and I have this weird thing I do. I swear I do. This is embarrassing to even admit. I will walk over to the pantry and fridge and I will open up and stand there and look. Because I'm looking for maybe the one thing that's behind a can of soup or something that I forgot to throw away, that I can eat. And I know I do this, and I'll do it multiple times. I do it even subconsciously. I'll be walking around, be thinking of something, and I'll be going over to the pantry going, I want something. And most often than not, I'm not even hungry. Another thing I've noticed is I'm not even hungry. It's a psychological, emotional reaction to stress. And so I've recognized that in myself. So just knowing that I can't have anything in the house. Even the baby, and I go, oh, the baby, well, you know what? It's good for the baby too. She doesn't need that crap either. She should be eating spinach. And she does. You know why? Because that's all there is in the damn house. I can't find another crumb of food anywhere. But it's true. If I want the crap, I got to go out and get it. And by the time I get in the car and everything else, I start thinking, hey, you know what? I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And I've asked my husband to hold me accountable. He's like, hell no, I ain't doing that. I've seen you with a cookie. I am not about to try and snatch that thing out of your hand. You can do more push-ups than I can. Anyway, so you got to control your environment. Now, what does that mean from a work? That's why I work from home. I've got a room in my house, downstairs in the basement, and the whole environment set up for me to be able to work. When I sit at my desk, I instantly go into productivity mode, into work mode, because I'm anchored that way. That's where I work. It's one spot, and there's no interruptions. I've got one phone that comes in. It doesn't have voicemail. It doesn't have call waiting. It has a do not disturb button on it, and I push the button, and my staff, nobody has the number. My staff has it, and it would have to be the building is on fire, and the building I'm in is on fire, and then they're going to call me and let me know. And that's the orange cone time we talked about. So I make sure my environment is set up. The baby doesn't come down there. Grandma doesn't bring the baby down there. If the dogs get annoying, they get upstairs. If they're barking at a squirrel, they're upstairs. I can control my environment. And I don't give a toss how much you guys say, oh, you don't have kids and they interrupt. You control the environment. You control the environment. You are in charge of your time. Stop blaming other people. Remember in the first talk I said things might have to, in order to get a result, it has to be a what? Instead of a, what was the second thing? Oh God, we're in trouble. You have to what? What was number 2? You have to take full responsibility for that. So you are fully responsible. Children will listen. If you've got issues with family where they're interrupting you constantly, I don't know. I don't have that issue because I set the rules really early on. But you control your environment, all right? You got to set yourself up to win. Here's another thing. Do you know that email send and receive can be turned off so email doesn't come in automatically? Did you guys know that? Did you know? This is really cool. You can block Facebook. There's this thing called web content filtering and stuff, and you can actually block certain websites. Did you guys know that? Isn't that cool? Isn't that cool? You could turn the send and receive off so it's not like you're not on crack every time, every time an email comes in. You can do those things. Control your environment. And in the beginning, that's this kind of stuff you're going to have to do. It's the equivalent of cleaning out the refrigerator except for a bag of spinach. And believe me, it's not going to be easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it. If it was easy, every one of you in here would be adding over $500,000 in profit to your bottom line, like the people up here were. In order to get those results, you have to be unreasonable. It is unreasonable to think that you would fire your top revenue-producing client because you know in your heart that they're not profitable enough. That is unreasonable. It's unreasonable to expect somebody to continue to market after their building was wiped out by a tornado. That is unreasonable. But unreasonable people get results. And if you're not putting those demands on yourself, nobody else is. It's you take full responsibility. And you've got to figure it out. And you've got to control your environment. Strategy number 3 is be an excellent note taker and list maker. I'm a big list maker, constantly making lists, writing things down. If you saw my desk, it is messy. It's organized. I know where everything is, but it's messy. And part of the reason it's messy is I'm working on something. I'm constantly thinking of something, writing it on a sticky note, slapping it on the desk here beside me. And I get back to what I'm doing. And then I think of something else, and I write it on a sticky note, and I slap it on the desk. And by the end of the day or a couple days, there's like all these notes. And so then I just take a time and I clean them all up. But be an excellent note taker. There's so much going on in our world, you can't remember it all. And part of the stress that you feel is that you know there's things you should be doing, and you're afraid that you haven't even remembered to do them. Is that right? That's a big stress. So one of the things that you can do to alleviate a lot of stress is the minute you have an idea, write it down. Have a place, have a way of organizing it. Now, it can be a notepad. I'm not going to tell you here's the tool or the technology. I use a thing called Backpack. Have you guys ever, it says 37 signals, and I've started using that, and it's just a big online list. But I just do it. Just get it out of your head. Write it down. That's the key thing. As soon as you get an idea, write it down and then get back focused on what you're doing, because that alleviates the stress, and now I don't have to think about, I got to remember this and remember this and remember this. You'll never remember it. Make sure you always walk around with a piece of paper and a notepad. In my bathroom, in my kitchen, everywhere, I've got these oversized sticky notes, and I've got a pen, because ideas will hit me, and I got to write them down. I stick it to, they're all over the house. It's crazy. But you got to have that's my system. That's what works for me. I'm not saying that's going to work for you. You've got to figure out what works for you, but be an excellent list maker and take notes. I'll give you another thing. When you're on a call with a client, or when you are in a sales meeting, take a minute to document what was discussed, how it was discussed, and put it into an email. Because if you move right on to the next thing, you're going to forget, and then you're going to have to waste time trying to remember what was said, who was doing what. So, Jeff does this. It's kind of like forced. When we do a captain's call or when we do a Geniusly call, we send an email saying, here's what was discussed and here's what we said. And that's as much for our benefit. I don't even think you guys read it, which is fine. It's for our benefit, so we remember, what did we discuss? What are the actions we need to take? Write them down right there while you're in the sales meeting, or when you leave, make notes in your car before you move on to the next thing, because it's fresh in your mind. That's what Patrick was talking about yesterday about debriefing, right? He said you do it right away, not tomorrow, not next week, because you won't remember. So be an excellent list maker and take really good notes. Number 4, work in time blocks and work to get things done. There's no money in doing. There's no money in doing. There's only money in done. We get paid when we finish the service for the client. Is that correct? We get paid when we get the result in our business. So saying I'm working on this, there's no money in that. As long as you know that, you should work to get done, not go to work on. I'll give you an example. When I was working on the marketing strategy brief, and I was doing this on Tuesday, and we're getting ready for this big conference, and I knew I wanted to kind of get ahead of the game a little bit, because I knew I was going to be completely absorbed in what we were doing here. One of the things I did is I said, I've got 2 articles I want to get done. I didn't say, I'm going to work on the marketing strategy brief. That's not how I thought. I said, I want to get the opening dialogue done, and I want to get the closing final thoughts done. Done. Not working on, done. There's no money in doing. There's only money in done. So when you go to work on something, no. You don't work on something. What are you going to get done? And you've got to think in terms of done. Not working on. I'm going to say it over and over because it's really important. If you pay attention to yourself as you are working throughout the day, you are working on things, which is fine, but you want to have many goals in there. I'm going to get this done. I'm going to get this done, not work on. And I actually play a little game with myself. In the beginning of every day, I have certain results and things that I have to get done that day. And it's right there in front of me. I put it on, I'm a sticky note. This is I love stickies. Sticky right there, right? And I play a game where I say, how fast can I get these things done? So I actually put myself on a clock, and if I can get it done sooner, I'll go for a walk. Or I reward myself in some way. I'll go play with the baby for an extra 10 minutes. I don't get a cookie, because then we're all in trouble. Because one cookie becomes 5 cookies. That's the problem. And that's the same. One email becomes 5 emails. One Facebook post ends up being a half an hour online. See, that's the problem. And that's a good point. I can't have any sugar, even when I'm on a cheat. Like last night I had a little birthday cake because it's my birthday, and I'm going to have to work really hard today and tomorrow. It's like crack for me. I got to have more. So even when I'm having a quote unquote like cheat meal, relaxed meal, as I say, I can't have sugar because it's a weakness for me. I just thrive on this stuff, and not in a good way. When I say thrive, it's like piranha kind of, that's that kind of thing, right? Not like thrive in a good way. So work in time blocks and get things done. Number 5, focus the majority on your time on high leverage activities. I call it the Southwest Airlines approach to business. Now, if you look at Southwest Airlines, they're very successful for a number of reasons. And Nashville's a big Southwest airline kind of hub. And every time I pull up to the airport, the Southwest Airlines is like they're constantly, everyone's traveling on Southwest, and all the other airlines are like empty. And so they're a very successful, very profitable company. When a lot of other airlines are going out of business who arguably should be more profitable, they've been in the game longer. These other airlines, American Airlines, United, these guys have been in the game longer than Southwest. They should be more profitable. They should know better. They have more experience. That's not the case. And one of the reasons that Southwest Airlines is so successful, and they start out with the lowest rates, and the customer service was a big key, is because they have one plane. They don't have 15 different planes. And so what that means is they only need the skills, the technicians that know how to service one plane. They only need to have the parts on hand to fix one plane, right? They only need pilots who know how to fly this one plane. And that makes for immense operational efficiencies, right? So I started out in the consulting business just like all of you, getting paid for my time, which is a horrible way to leverage yourself. Getting dollars for time is horrible leverage. You can't, because there's a limit. There's only so much you can do, and it depends on you doing something. All right, that's a bad exchange. So that's why I created the things like the toolkit and the blueprint and the BDR in a box and the Producers Club and the Apprentice Club, because I wanted a way to deliver something to my customers that was high value, that they couldn't get anywhere else, and that was highly leverageable. So once I created it, I can sell it over and over and over again. For you guys, BDR is definitely one of those things. Definitely. If I was in your shoes, I would be going out there and focused on selling backup disaster recovery as much as I could. Because think about it. It grows in revenue naturally. How many of your clients have more data today than they did a year ago? Yeah, and once you sell it, as long as you don't screw things up, they're going to keep buying, right? It's like that's your vending machine. And that's not to say you don't sell consulting services. I'm not suggesting that. But in your business, you want to have vending machines. Customer walks up, puts money in, product spits out, done. It's a system. And you want to think about that, high leverage activities. So for example, I don't do anything. I don't take on any project unless it has some other synergy as well. I get asked all the time, Robin, can you come speak to our plumbing association? Robin, can you take your marketing and can you create it for, California Food Service Administration is a bunch of lunch ladies. I get asked all the time, could you create something for this? Could you create, and the problem is there's no synergy in it. So to me, I only take projects that have synergy, meaning they have multiple ways I can profit from it. Okay, so for example, when Intronis came to me and said, we want to sponsor the BDR in a box, well, that's a natural for me because it's a product I have and it's materials I can leverage already. It's introducing me to new prospects in their list, so that's good, and I can sell it to my own list. That's a high leverage activity. And I can put my full effort behind that because it has multiple facets. Nito Cobain, who you saw speak, the reason Nito goes out and even speaks at all is because it's marketing for High Point. Think about it. He's getting paid a pretty hefty fee for coming out and speaking to entrepreneurs. Guess who his number one clientele are? Entrepreneurs. Because you know what happens at the end of his speeches? You know what people come up to me, and they say it to me. I'm sure they say it to him. What do you think they say? I want my kid going to High Point University. So he just got paid to deliver a commercial. That's high leverage. I mean, well, I say commercial, but you get the idea. That's high synergy. Okay? So you've got to make sure you think and work in the majority of your time on high leverage activities. All right, not things that you get paid one-off to do. Now, occasionally you have to do that. When I got started, that's how I started. But you want to start thinking about high leverage. What's something that, like when I talked yesterday about the BDR, has a natural upward trend that lower skilled workers could do or manage, that could be automated or systematized in some way. And you go, well, you can't do that in my business, Robin. You know, you just can't do it. What is that? If I just said that to myself, what is that? It's a negative belief. Of course you're not going to be able to find it because you just shut off any possibility because you just said it's not possible. But what if you thought maybe it is possible? Let me think, how would it happen? And you put some time and thought, and you might not come up with the answer in a minute, but if you give yourself some time and you start always thinking about, am I spending my time on high leverage activities? Things that once I create it, once I implement it, I can use it over and over again. It's synergistic with everything else I'm doing. And it's going to be a profit faucet for me, meaning that it's going to constantly feed me for a long time. I think I just heard a cell phone go off. All right, we'll fess up later. I'm going to send Dan to come get you. All right, number 6, never start anything from scratch. Never, never, never start anything from scratch. If you wanted to learn how to break boards like Tim Shea did, would you just kind of go home and say, honey, hold up a board, you know, and you break your wrist, right? And Tim even said, he said, if you know the technique, it's easy to do, okay? So would you go home and try and figure out the technique using your own hand and wrist as, you know, okay, well, you'll learn quick. Or would you go to Tim and say, well, show me the technique? And I know breaking boards, Tony Robbins, that's the whole big thing, right? So I know the technique as well, okay? And if I teach it to you or Tim taught it to you, within a minute, every single person in this room could break a board, without a doubt. Because you just got to know the techniques and the strategies of how you do it, okay? And let me give you a little secret. You turn the board so the grain is going up and down, not sideways. All right, so that's like a little tiny technique. If you don't know, it's the difference between breaking a board or breaking your wrist. Okay, so those little distinctions are important, and that's why in the Producers Club, it's really important that you guys never try and create anything on your own. Who has something that's already done this? Who has gone through this before? Modeling. That's why I go to Joe's 25K group, because there's a whole bunch of really smart entrepreneurs there who are my peers, and I can say to them, well, what's your compensation plan for your coaches or your sales? And they've gone through it, and they've already done it, and they're generous, and they give it to you. So modeling is huge. You've got to make sure that even in marketing, I never, ever start any marketing campaign from scratch. Never. And at my stage in the game, I could sit down with a blank sheet of paper and I could write out a sales letter. I could. I never do. The top copywriters in this industry, top marketers, never start from scratch. We always take something that's worked and we modify it, we tweak it, we try and improve it, but we never start from scratch. And the same thing for you. I mean, that's what the toolkit is. Even if it's an email campaign that was for BDR, if you don't stop saying, well, that won't work for managed services, if you stop incanting that belief and saying, oh, I can't use it for this, and you say, well, how could I use it? You'll see patterns, and you can tweak and you can modify things, all right? But never, ever start from scratch with anything that you do. Huge, huge strategy there. Number 7, you want to document and systematize everything you do as much as you can. Because when you have systems, your mind can free up and relax. When I do a close from the front of the room, I have it scripted. I know what to say. When I'm selling a toolkit, for example, I know exactly what to say, when to say it, how to say it, what timing I need. I know, it's down to the minute. I say, to the people that flag me if I'm, 20 minutes because I got to be going into the Napoleon Hill story. And it's a system. It's factory work at this point. It's factory work, which is good because then I can focus on being myself and being relaxed and having personality for, and those kinds of things and engaging and making eye contact instead of freaking out because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Systematize and document everything. Marketing strategy brief that we write, the technology times that I write, any kind of work product that I do has a system. This boot camp, we have a 20-page document that has all the steps that we have to do leading up to this to pull this off. All the steps. And when we get back, we're going to do a debrief and we're going to say, what do we do right? What do we do wrong? And we're going to improve on it. And we're going to keep, hey, you know what would even be even better? I noticed this, let's do this next time. And I noticed this, let's do this next time. That's why I'm able to have, we had 473 people or somewhere in that range register. We've got the virtual stream, we've got over 100 people on virtual. And that's why I'm able to pull off an event like this with 7 people. Think about that. Because it's systematized. I don't need, and that's a profit factor as well. The more organized and the more systematized your business, the more profitable it will be. Because you don't need 2 people to do one person's job if they're organized and they're clear and they know the result they want to get. Right? You've got to systematize things as much as possible. Number 8, train yourself to habitually work fast, keep deadlines, and keep commitments. And I gave you guys an ass chewing the other day about getting in the room on time. And again, like I said, it doesn't matter to me. I'm going to deliver this presentation. I've already gotten paid. But it matters to you because every time you miss a commitment to yourself that you make, you train yourself that you don't keep your commitments. And it's in the little things. Like I said yesterday, Harv Eker, one of my favorite quotes from him is, how you do anything is how you do everything. And if you're going to be 5 minutes late getting in the room, you're going to be 5 minutes late getting your newsletter done. You're going to be 5 minutes late getting the website done. You're going to be 5 minutes late in organizing or systematizing or planning or anything else. And you can't get it all done. Guys, I don't get it all done. That's not the goal. And actually, getting it all done is a false god. You can't get everything done. You shouldn't even try to get everything done. You should try and get the most important results. But the point is, you've got to train yourself because winning is a habit. Guess what? So is losing. When people go on diets, the reason they give up is, what do they say? I've tried everything. You haven't tried everything. If you tried everything and followed it through, you would have gotten the result. Because how many diets do you need to lose weight? How many different diets do you need to lose weight? The one you'll do. People ask me all the time, Robin, what's the best exercise for my abs, for my butt, for my legs, for my whatever? You know what I always used to say to people? It's the one you'll do. That's the best exercise. All right, so you've got to train yourself to keep deadlines, and the most important ones to keep are the ones that nobody else will hold you accountable for. It's that unreasonableness. It's unreasonable to say, I'm always on time, I'm punctual for everything in my life. That's unreasonable. But if you make it a must and not a should, then all of a sudden, you keep your commitments. It's the tiny things. It's the broken windows. You guys have heard me talk about the broken windows concept. There's a book. It's called Broken Windows, Broken Business. It's a fantastic book. You ought to read it. And it's essentially based on Rudy Giuliani's, the mayor of New York, Rudy Giuliani. When he became mayor, crime was overrun in New York. And one of the things Rudy said he was going to do is he was going to have a zero tolerance policy, meaning they treated jaywalkers as severely as they treated someone who created murder, per se. And at first, there was this huge pushback on it. Everyone said, well, how can you possibly do that? It's unreasonable. It is, how can you have our police force cracking down on jaywalkers and people who are hanging out like homeless people, like pilfering on the street when we've got murders happening? We need to put all our efforts on the murders. We need to put it there. And he says, no. He says, you know what? Because we're going to send a clear message that crime will not be tolerated. And I forget exactly what the percentage is, but his theory proved absolutely correct. And it's based on, there's a criminologist, and I can't remember who came up with this theory of the broken windows. And they studied it, and they found that in a major city, if there is a building that is in vacant and, let's say, falling into disrepair, and a kid comes along or someone comes along and breaks a window, if that window doesn't get repaired immediately, pretty soon all the windows start to get broken. All right? So that's the whole concept of the book. What the lesson here is the tiny things that you will not tolerate, the standards you set end up making the bigger things happen. So by cracking down on jaywalkers and having people know that the police were serious about enforcing the law, not kind of loose about those things, they were serious, every crime was a crime, all of a sudden the crime rate dropped significantly. So in your business, these are the tiny little broken windows that you need to fix. Nito Cobain, those of you who were with me at High Point, he showed us the transformation of High Point. What did he say it was $700 million he put into High Point, was it? 700 million. And he showed us pictures of when he got on campus, and he talked about a thing called deferred maintenance. And he says, you know, most universities, and he showed us the dorm rooms and the signs and the disrepair and the cracks in the sidewalks and the trash. And it wasn't terrible. I mean, some of it was terrible, but he said, this is deferred maintenance. These are things that we defer to put investments in because, we need to put money on more important things, right? So the signs on the dorm room, even if they're just written in, like someone put up a piece of cardboard and taped it to the wall and wrote their dorm number on it, that's fine. We don't need to focus on that. We need to focus on bigger things. That's the way the university was run before he got there. Nito said, that can't be acceptable. If we're going to create a culture here, if we're going to create something unique, we need to do it from our toes all the way up. It's called intentional congruency. And so when you train yourself to get yourself to do everything punctually and on time, it is an unreasonable demand, but it makes everything else work because it's an integrity within yourself. And next thing you know, your team will follow. Because if you can't show up for meetings on time and do what you say you're going to do on time, how can you expect them to do it? How can you look them in the eye and say, give your absolute best? I want you to bring your A game every single day. I want you to come here passionate to work. I want you to come here on fire. I want you to come here with your great ideas. I want you to show up energized every day when you're not. And I often hear people say, well, hiring employees and finding good people is the hardest thing. How many of you would agree with that? All right. Let me ask you this. How do you get an A player to come work for a B player? You don't. You don't. You've got to be the A plus player. You've got to lead by example. The fish stinks from the head down. And so this training yourself to habitually focus, orange cone time, is really important. And it's discipline. Like Tom Hopkins said earlier in the conference, it's the ability to get yourself to do the things you know you should do when the will and the motivation to do it is gone. And you really need to do that. Strategy number 9, have a stop doing list. I've never gotten fat from something I didn't eat. Here's a fact. Americans, I don't know exactly the numbers, but we are growing more and more obese as a nation. Obesity in children is now showing. It's horrible. Yet, the average person walking around who is overweight is also malnourished. How can you be 20, 30, 50 pounds overweight and be malnourished? What are you doing? What do you have to do to be 20 pounds, 30 pounds, 50 pounds overweight and be malnourished? You eat all the wrong things. So in your business, if you are overwhelmed with stuff and there's no money, what are you doing? All the wrong things. All the wrong things. You need to have a stop doing list. Now, in my business, and this is how I hire people. This is how I've done it from day one. When I was just myself, answering the phones, processing all the orders, doing everything. It was me, right? And the dogs, but the dogs don't type so well, so I couldn't do much with them. But it was just me. I mean, I'm everything, right? And what I started doing is saying, well, what am I doing on a daily basis? And I would take notes, and I have a pad of paper, and I would say, here's the things I'm doing on a daily basis. Here's about the amount of time it's taking me. And what that was my first hire. That I was writing my job description for my first hire. So answering the phones, processing orders, getting a newsletter out, working, all these things. That was my first hire. When my next hire happened, it was a higher skilled person. So it was a marketing person I needed to hire, someone who could help me put together the marketing campaigns and fulfill and all the rest of it. And I did the same thing. And I'm doing it right now. In next quarter, I'm going to be looking for a VP of marketing. And this is going to be a very highly skilled person. This is not going to be an easy hire for me, but I know exactly what I'm looking for because I've been writing down what are the things I'm spending my time on that I have to stop doing if I'm going to get to the next level. Because I'm the bottleneck, like most of you, I'm the bottleneck in the business. Is that true for most of you? You're the bottleneck. You've got to figure out how you can constantly take pieces of you and what you're doing and hire quality people who can do that. Okay? So I have to have that stop doing list because I've never gotten fat from something that I didn't eat. And by the way, I've never eaten anything by accident either. So don't tell me that you've accidentally got too busy because you've chosen to be that way. Number 10, stay mentally and physically fit to keep your energy high. You cannot do a 4-day conference and be on fire and as energetic as I am if you are out of shape, you're dehydrated, malnourished, and you're just like your health is in the toilet. I'll tell you, I've been very fortunate. Other than the skin cancer, I've not really had any major illnesses that I've had to deal with. And that's a blessing because I know there's people who are dealing with that. And God bless you because, the stress of that is unbelievable. So if you are healthy, do everything you can to keep it. Because when you lose your health, you can't perform a business. You can't run a business. Ask anybody who's had to go through a major problem. Super Dave, where's Super Dave? Fell off a roof, broke his back, didn't you? And I remember him telling me, thank God I had been doing the right things. I started selling managed services because I was able to kind of keep my business going. You break your back. How are you going to go? You're not going to go on site to install a server. How are you going to even get that done? You've got to keep your health. So, exercise and eat clean. And exercise doesn't have to be P90X, doing insanity, mean old Luke kind of workouts. You work up to that, okay? You're going to hurt yourself real bad if you just leap in there, okay? Take a walk, all right? Go to bed early. I go to bed at 8. Actually, it's been like 8:30. I actually start getting ready for bed. I'm in bed by 9 o'clock every night. Why? Because I'm up at 5 a.m. and I'm working. And then, people ask me, oh, when you have this baby, Robin, and I was freaked out when I was like, how am I possibly going to make this work? And that's a very disempowering question. I started saying it, how am I possibly going to make this work? Oh my God, I'm so overwhelmed. And I thought, you know what, you can't approach it that way. So I started asking myself, how am I going to get this to work? You see the difference? How am I going to make this work? How am I going to? And I kept asking and I saw Nito Cobain speak, and he said he gets up at 4 a.m., has Turkish coffee, grows a mustache, and gets to work. So, anyway, I think I got it all today. So I said, well, maybe not 4, but I can get up at 5. I can definitely get up at 5 a.m., and I have. And I've kept that. Now, sometimes I was ill, and sometimes on purpose I'll let myself sleep in. Sometimes when I feel like my body's telling me I need more rest. But I've done it intentionally. I don't do it like, oh, the alarm goes off and I lay there. It's done intentionally. I drag my tired ass out of bed at 5 a.m. And I get downstairs and I turn the coffee pot, doink. Just push a button because it's already set up. I let the dogs out. Coffee's done. Go right to work. And I know exactly what I'm going to work on first thing, every single day, even on weekends. Because if I let myself get up late on the weekends, I have to retrain myself to get up on Monday morning. All right, so even on weekends, even if I just sometimes if I want to take a break, if it's like a day off for me, I'll still get up at 5 a.m., I'll just read a book or I'll watch TV or I'll do whatever I feel like doing. But I'm in that habit. I don't want to lose that habit. So you got to go to bed early. Turn off the damn TV. I hardly watch any TV. The only time when I'm in my Egoscue tower, those of you who are doing, remember John Elder? The tower, yeah, exactly. We got to lay in the tower. I know. It's like an hour long. That's how I found Lou, because I was sitting there laying in the tower. You got to, put the TV on. What else are you going to do? It's really hard to read a book like this. Your arms, the blood drains down, because you're laying on the floor. Anyway, those of you who don't know what the tower is won't find that funny. But anyway, you can't read a book, because you're laying on the floor like this. It's kind of difficult. So that's the only time I watch TV. I really don't watch a lot of TV because, the other thing is when I've been sitting in front of a computer screen all day, the last thing I want to do is sit in front of another computer screen, as far as I'm concerned. I want to go out and take a walk. I want to walk the dogs. I want to breathe. I want to play with the baby. I just want to, we go in the gym. She likes to play around, whatever. That's the kind of stuff that will give you more energy than plopping down in front of the TV and switching off your brain. Turn the cell phone off, and the laptop for that matter. Some of you have been sitting in this conference, and I've seen you doing this. You're like, if you are like that and you can't focus for 90 minutes on an important topic that you paid to be here and flew from wherever you flew to learn this information, and you can't put this damn thing down, you need to give it to Dan the F-bomb. That's all the more. So you need an intervention for yourself. Now, some people say, well, I'm taking notes. But see, that to me is that's like putting candy bars in the pantry for the baby. Because I'm saying, well, I'm taking notes, but you're still addicted to this thing. And you need to get it away from you so you can think. All right, so turn the cell phone off, turn off the laptop, and take your dog for a walk. How many of you have a dog? My dogs are my best accountability partners when it comes to walking. Because they know they walk. I can't put shoes on without them going. Because they know that's like the only time I put shoes on because I work from home most of the time, Yeah, I know. I'm like, God, if you feel lonely, get a dog. You can go outside to take the trash out, come back in. They act like they've never seen you. They're like, oh, my God, you came back. They're awesome. Take your dog for a walk. I'm telling you, breathe the air, get out. Even if it's cold, it doesn't matter. Get out and take a walk. Get out and get some sunlight. I mean, I do it because I have to, like 4:30-ish, 4 o'clock. I got to get that. I've got to get my vitamin D. So I go outside and I walk the dogs. And it doesn't happen every day. I'm not perfect. It's not about being perfect. But take the dog for a walk and do it on a regular basis. Get on a schedule. So that way they know. And believe me, they'll start, they get edgy. They know when it's walk time. And those of you who walk your dogs on a regular basis, that's kind of how it is. Some final observations, and then we're going to go to some questions. There's always more to do that can possibly be done, right? And so therefore, my goal is never to get caught up. There is no caught up, because the minute I get this done, something else is coming on, right? So there is no caught up. It's a false god. I don't even know why we're trying to achieve it. It's a foolish goal. I'm trying to get more results faster, but I'm never going to be, quote unquote, caught up. Never, ever. The day that happens is the day I take a dirt nap. And even then they can bury me with an action plan or whatever, but I will not have all my work done. I can promise you that. You're supposed to be overwhelmed, but feeling overwhelmed is a choice. So we should be overwhelmed with opportunities, because that's really what this is. Really what you're doing is you have so much opportunity that it's overwhelming. So many good things you could be doing, that you should be doing, that you must be doing. They're blessings, but feeling overwhelmed about it is a choice. It's all in how you approach it. You can't manage time and you can't manufacture it. All you can do is make good choices about your time, what you're going to do, and how you're going to spend your time. And you won't get it perfect. When I go down and I work in the morning and I made my list of things I believe I need to get done and what's most important to me, I'm not getting it right all the time, but I do have a plan. It's better than showing up and doing whatever or not having that. You're not going to get it perfect. You actually have to know what's most important and what you're trying to accomplish before you can put that plan together. So one of the things, Dean Jackson is a friend I've met through Joe, phenomenal marketer. We're actually interviewing him next month on the Business Builder. It's either next month or the month after. And I recommend you guys listen. Dean's a brilliant marketer. But he has this thing he calls the I know I'm being successful when list, right? And I have one too. And it's a list of things that I know I'm being successful when. And some of the things on my list are, I know I'm being successful when my passive income exceeds my living and my daily needs. I know I'm being successful when I'm full of energy and I'm lean and I'm fit and I'm working out. I know I'm being successful when I'm working with people that I'm inspired by. My team is my biggest inspiration. Those people are true professionals. And I never want to hear them call me their boss. I'm not their boss. We are teammates. We are teammates. Megan and Kathy and Andrea, we are just doing different work, but we're on the same team. Okay? And so you got to know what's most important before you accomplish it. And the I know I'm being successful list is important because you need a measurement to know if you're doing the right things and accomplishing what you want. Because you could go off and make a whole lot of money and still not be fulfilled in your life because you haven't sat down and really decided in my life, at the end of my life, when I look back, what do I want to have said I've done? What's really most important? What's really most important? And money is important, believe me. It's not the most important thing, but it's right up there with oxygen. So you got to have ways to get money. You've got to have ways to have finances. To pay for nice things and to have that security and provide for your family. So it's important. But figure out, this is your drive for why you're doing these things. So you got to know what's important before you can actually build a plan to be productive to go and get it. And I recommend all of you, when you leave here today, write down the I know I'm being successful when list. Even if you've done it before, do it again. Do it again. Ultimately, failure or success in this area is a choice. You choose to work on improving and continuing to make improvements, or you're going to continue to make excuses as to why you can't get it done. It's up to you. It is ultimately a choice. That's the secret of life, is your ability to choose. Your ability to choose to be here or not be here. Your ability to choose to stay to the end or not stay to the end. Your ability to choose that the fact that you're even in business in the first place. It is a choice. And so I'm going to wrap up. I'm going to give you some recommended reading. Psychology of Winning, Dennis Waitley. You would think it's not a time management thing, but it is. It's a classic. I'd recommend you read that. Another great book is Do Less, Achieve More. Chin-Ning Chu, I think I'm saying that right. How to Get Control of Your Time and Your Life, Alan Lakin. Another classic I'd recommend. And How to Find the Motivation to Follow Through. Some other strategies that you might think about to get yourself to follow through. Stop saying, I don't have time to. Anything in your life, remove that phrase from your vocabulary. I don't have time to, because even myself, I'll catch myself saying, well, I don't have time to, and I go, I have time, I choose not to. You have time for anything. You have time for anything that you choose to have time for. And put yourself back in control. You are in control. So stop saying, I don't have time. Correct yourself and say, I choose not to. Number 2, keep in mind you're perfectly capable of achieving anything. All of you are perfectly capable of having $1 million in your bank account. You're perfectly capable. Stop saying you're not. Now, if I say that and you go, oh, that's not me, that's a belief system kicking in. And that's part of the reason why you don't have it. I was teasing somebody, and I was saying, I bet I could get you to spend $10,000 to sponsor my boot camp. And he was like laughing. He goes, I don't have $10,000. You would never get it from me, Ramu, because I could never get my hands on $10,000. And I said, that's exactly why you don't have it. So you've got to make sure that you know you are perfectly capable. You're perfectly capable. You can learn. Look how much you've learned up to this point in your life. You are perfectly capable. You're smart enough. You have the resources. We live in America. There's opportunity everywhere. You are perfectly capable. And you've got to keep reminding yourself, I am perfectly capable of achieving whatever it is I want to achieve. Recharge your batteries. This boot camp, how many of you feel, I know you're tired, I get that, and I know that you feel a little bit overwhelmed. We've talked about that. But how many of you feel more inspired today than you did when you walked in here? Okay? And that's not just me. How many of that is because it's somebody you met here or one of the 7 people you got to see up here on stage? They're the real inspiration, yes? Right? Because you're going, you know what? Their success is my inspiration. If they can do it, I can do it. I'm capable of doing it. Never forget you need motivation. You need inspiration. Everybody kind of makes fun of the personal motivation industry. Zig Ziglar used to say, people would always say, personal motivation, it kind of, it's no good because it wears off. It's like, he said, well, so does bathing, and that's why we do it every day, right? So, personal motivation. I listen, as hokey as you think it is, I still listen to Tony Robbins' Personal Power. All the time, on a regular basis, because it fires me up, because, it reminds me that I'm in control. I can achieve what I want. I'm capable of doing anything I want to do. So you got to recharge your batteries. Come to these events, because people sit there at home, and they look at the flight, and they look at the cost, and they look at all the things they got to do, and they go, I don't know, maybe I won't go. That's a bad decision. You need to remember that. When you find a source of power, when you find a source of inspiration, the last thing you should ever do is disconnect from it. Tornado or hurricanes, when they're off the coast, what's the source of their power? The water. What happens when they move away from the source of the power and go inland? They diminish. If you find a source of power, of inspiration, make sure you stay connected to it. It's extremely important. Hang around with successful people. This all goes part and parcel. Your team at home, when you go back to your office, if you're not excited to see those people, you need to make some change. If those people in your office are not supporting you, if they're not your fans, if they're not on the same team with you, if they're not, when I come back from a conference, when I come back from Joe's, like a 25K meeting, before I even come back, I'm firing off emails. I'm like, all right, here's what we're going to do. I'm already setting action plans. And you know what? My team never goes, oh, crap, she's going to Joe's 25K. You're ready for this. She's going to come back with 15 ideas. And we're going to have to do them because this chick follows through. I'll tell you something. This is so tragic, and it's a true story. I was talking to somebody a couple of years ago. I was out at an industry event, and they described to me, we were talking about something that was an initiative going on in their organization, and the person said to me, well, our CEO, we just call him the Zit. I said, and this is somebody who's a very high-level person in this organization. He's a vice president. I said, Zit? He goes, oh, yeah. He gets these ideas in his head, and he gets all fired up about it, and then the idea is just like a zit. It pops, and it goes away, which is really gross. But, they say, we know if we just wait him out, he'll forget about it. He'll be on to the next thing. If that's your team, they're describing you like that, you need to have people around you that are on fire with you. And if they're not, they need to be fired. Okay? And get accountability. All the accountability groups, Producers Club members, if you guys are not in an accountability group, get in one. And don't be the guy or the gal who doesn't show up and doesn't keep your commitments, because you're going to bring the group down and your captain's going to fire you from the group. When you least want the accountability is when you need it the most. When you least need and want that accountability is when you need it the most. When you go, I'm so overwhelmed, I'm dealing with so much, and legitimate issues, sometimes, sick family members, real crisis going on, that's when you need it the most. Make sure you get in your accountability groups, participate and play full out. And captains, let me have my captains stand up. All my captains, give these guys some applause. Don't let these guys off the hook, guys. Hold their feet to the fire, all right? And then before I take questions and we'll go to Q&A, Never complain about a blessing. And this is something that I've sort of taken on as a mantra for myself. And I'm going to tell you, I'm not perfect with it yet because I catch myself quite a bit. In fact, I think what we're going to do is I'm going to have bracelets made up, and I'll send it to all of you. But never complain about a blessing. And here's what I mean. The other day, and this is tragic. This is sad. We live in a society where we think complaining connects us with other people, and it does. You know, if you complain about what's going on, oh my God, I'm so overwhelmed, oh my God, this, that, you know what happens? People go, oh yeah, and they commiserate with you and they connect with you and there's that connection. That is a terrible thing. Because like if you go into a group and someone says like, well, how are you doing? You're like, well shit, I made $1 million, man. I'm freaking, I'm doing awesome. I've lost 20 pounds. I made $1 million. I mean, life is awesome. You know why people don't say that? Because they know they feel like it's bragging and they know they will lose connection with people. And that's really sad. It's really sad. We were walking, Jamie, it's funny, we got this pink car for her, and it's got a big long handle, and we walk along, pushing the baby, walking the dogs as a family, and we're walking along. And there was a woman, we walked past this woman in our neighborhood. She's playing with her little girl in the lawn, and I can't believe she said this. She said, oh, just you wait. She says, pretty soon they're going to want to play with you. And I thought, and what's bad about that, And I said, well, she already does, I don't know what to say to that, I kind of caught me off guard a little bit, to be honest with you. And she goes, oh, but don't worry, it's going to get worse. And she says this in front of her daughter, who's playing ball with her. And I felt like stopping and saying, you know what, I'll take your daughter. You want to come live with me? You going to give up your kid? Is she such a problem? I'll take her. Never complain about a blessing. If you feel overwhelmed because you got so many projects on your plate, don't complain about it. It's a blessing. If you've got challenges in your business, don't complain about it. You have a business. There's people that don't have that. When I'm working out with mean old Luke and he's cracking the whip and making me do push-ups, or he's making me do whatever he's making me do, I complain about it. No, I'm just kidding. I actually do a little bit because it's fun. But anyway, but the point is, you know what? What if I didn't have legs? What if I couldn't do push-ups? Let me tell you something that was really interesting we found out last night. Lou Ferrigno was here, and I didn't know this. He was with his doctor. His doctor was traveling with him, and I knew he had surgery, but I didn't want to ask. Because I talked to him like a week before the event on the phone, and he says, oh, I'm sorry, I'm a little groggy, and so forth. So I knew he had surgery, but I didn't know what had happened. He actually had it's a revolutionary new technology. I don't know all the details of it, but essentially there's an implant that this doctor put into his head right here, and he let me feel. He's like, he couldn't even feel. It was like a little microchip or something, and it connected somehow to his eardrum and into his brain. So hearing aids, he said, are obsolete. He said they distort the sound. So even though people have hearing aids, they still can't really clearly hear. With this new technology, he can now hear as clearly as you and I. Now, here's the crazy thing. I didn't know this till after we went to dinner with him the night. He had just turned that device on for the first time in his life right before he came on the stage. And the reason I was sitting up here is because he says, I need someone up here in case I can't hear questions. He said, so could you come, because he reads lips. And so when you're up on stage, it's so bright, you can't see the people in the audience. And so he said, I won't be able to hear. So just as a safety net, he said, be up here and repeat the questions for me. And as you saw, he didn't have to. Literally, folks, this was the first time in his life he ever heard his own voice. Isn't that cool? I didn't even know that. And he's gone back on the Celebrity Apprentice, and they are going to have like a grand finale in, I think, a month or something. I don't know. They do a grand finale event. And he said that they are going to talk about this technology that he's one of the only 800 people in the world that have even used this. It's sort of testing. And I'm like, well, I'll tell you what I'll do, Lou. I will send you the video footage from my boot camp with my logo behind it. And I will let you play that on the Celebrity Apprentice. And you know what? I didn't say the logo bit, but we'll make sure that's in there, right? So, I don't know how they edit these things, and I don't know, but he might even, this video footage, because think about it, a couple hours before he gets on stage in front of an audience, the first time in his life he's ever heard his own voice. Think about that and what he's accomplished. I mean, things we take for granted, the fact that we can hear, the fact that we can see clearly, the fact that we have a voice, the fact that we are physically able to do what we're able to do. So if when you're working out and it's painful and you're sweating, say, thank God I can do this. Thank God I can feel the pain. Thank God I can feel the burn, because I might be laying in a hospital bed and I wouldn't be able to feel any of this. So in your business and in your life, I think what's really important is that we tend to complain a lot, and we complain about blessings. We complain about the fact that we've got challenges. Well, challenges are how we grow. We're in business. That's why we're in business. We're in business to solve problems. We get paid to solve problems. Thank God there's problems, right? So it changes your perspective. Never complain about a blessing that you have. Never complain about a blessing. And I think if you find that, if you adopt it, you will have absolutely nothing to complain about. Nothing. Because we are all so blessed. And I think that's a part of it. If you come from that spirit when you go to work, in your business and the challenges and the overwhelm, say, thank God I've got these options. Thank God you came to this boot camp and you don't have like one campaign that you're putting you're hoping is going to work. You're putting all your chips on one color, one number. Thank God you've got 50 different options, 100 different options that all can work. That's a blessing. That's not a curse. It's all on how you interpret it and how you think about it. So I've got about 15 minutes left. Questions? If not, we can take an extended break. But if you guys got questions, line up at the mics, please. Go for it.
Just along the lines of never complain, I took a Dale Carnegie sales training years ago, and the golden rule was don't criticize, condemn, or complain.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I always try to remind myself of that, because it's so easy to fall into, the negativity. So.
It is, absolutely.
But the question I had is, I wanted to thank you for sharing your schedule. I've done the wake up at 5 a.m. pretty consistently, but I've also done the stay up till 10, 11, 1, 2, when I'm really working hard on something, to where then I can't wake up consistently. Mm-hmm. And I wondered, when do you work out? When do you find time in your schedule to do that?
Usually around 10 a.m. So I work from 5 until about 10. I take one break in there. I go up and have breakfast with the baby, and then I come back down and I work. Usually it's around 10 o'clock in the morning. But by then I've gotten a lot done.
Okay.
I work out, have lunch, and then I get back to work.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then do you have any advice as to when you're the one-man show and you're trying to juggle the business owner, marketer, technician, as to how you get past the, I always feel guilty if I'm going to work on my business because I'm ignoring, the customer service, the technical, I got all these problems I got to fix. How do you get past that?
Well, I have to know more about what the situation is, okay? So you always want to fulfill on customers the promises you've made to customers. I mean, that's like top of the priority. And that, even for me, if there's something I've promised to a customer, that gets worked, and I'm never late. But if it's getting close to that deadline, that's going to get worked on, because I got to fulfill on that. If you don't fulfill on that, you're going to be out of business. Mm-hmm. Then beyond that, I would wonder why you're either you need to hire somebody, and if you say, well, I don't have the money, then that tells me you're not charging enough. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure exactly where the problem is, but my feeling, either you have to raise your rates. See, I think as one-man bands, I see a lot of people, what they do is they go, okay, $70 an hour or whatever it is, or they do extra work. They don't treat themselves as a technician with billable hours as a product. And then what they end up doing is more work and not billing for it, or they undercharge for it, and then they get to a point where they're so maxed out that they can't hire someone, because what they're billing for themselves, they can't even, in other words, they would just give up their entire salary. So that goes back to building things like BDR, backup disaster recovery, or hosted exchange, or whatever it is you can sell to get some recurring revenue in there, some things that aren't going to require you doing project work. And I think so you've got to be smart about what you sell, mm-hmm. okay? And you've got to make sure that you are sharp and utilized and have organization and systems. And then maybe start outsourcing pieces of it, maybe to you know, to someone who can, like a 1099, or someone who can do some of the work to alleviate yourself. So there's not an exact step-by-step formula. It's kind of like just working smart, making sure you're charging enough and you're selling the right things, and not doing work for free or spinning around in circles, looking for efficiencies and franchising what you're doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, very helpful. I think when I go back, I'm going to implement control into my environment, into my schedule.
Okay.
I think that'll help greatly. I remember a book called Time Traps, and it talked about a CEO work schedule where you turn off the phone, the email, you're completely unavailable. And it's just, as a technician, my clients love me, but I feel guilty when I'm not just sitting there waiting for their call.
Well, I mean, you still can like take in their calls. You just have to have a system for it. I mean, I work with email on. I can now work with email and the internet connected and without having the problem, because I'm disciplined enough. I can do that. Okay. But I think you just nailed. I think you know the answer. Think to yourself, well, what could I do to be more efficient? One of the things, I didn't mention this, one of the things I do that I've trained myself to do is, as soon as I'm done one task, I move right on to the next, and I move right on to the next, and I move right on to the next. And instead of what most people do is they do one thing, check email, surf online, get a drink, take a pee, go back to something else. They work a little bit, check email, go online, get a drink, take a pee, wander around, talk to have someone. Do I sound like, I mean, and you know what? They probably do it so subconsciously. Here's something to do. I started doing this, I forgot to mention it. I started doing interval training, on my own. And anyway, interval training is where you have like a 10-second rest, and then you do a real high intensity exercise for 30 seconds or 40 seconds or whatever. Then you take a short rest, and then you go again. And so there's these little timers called Gym Boss. It's called Gym Boss, okay? So what I've started doing is clipping the Gym Boss on. And I set it so I work in intervals. So I set it to work for 70 minutes, typically. 70 minutes with a 10-minute break. And at that 10-minute break, I can wander around, take a pee, drink, I can play with the dogs, and do whatever I want to do. I can check email then, too. That's when I can check email. I give myself permission to do that, right? As soon as the timer goes off, next interval, I go right back into work.
Okay.
And I set that for many rounds throughout the day, and it's like it'll clip on your clothing, so it'll like beep and vibrate. And I've learned, it's funny, I put it on your clothes because I put it on my desk, and when the thing vibrates and beeps, it scares the crap out of me because it goes beep, and I'm like real focused, and it's real quiet, and all of a sudden that thing will go off. But maybe you start working in intervals where you take a break, and then when that next interval comes, you know exactly the exercise you're going to do. It's not like wandering around figuring out what you're going to do. Unless that's the next interval, is the planning. I need to write out what I need to accomplish, and I need to plan this, and so forth.
Okay.
That keeps you and no checking email. When you're doing your interval, no checking email, no going into Facebook, no doing the things that you can do that in the 10-minute break that you give yourself.
Yeah, very much like that book, Time Traps, that I appreciate it. It's very helpful. So,
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Robin, your systematization, hear myself, it's weird. The systematized thing, the planning for this event with your staff, 20-page document.
Yep.
Out of curiosity, is that a series of tasks and objectives? Mostly tasks, mostly objectives?
Well, we have a few key objectives, meaning results we want to achieve for this meeting. Obviously one is going to be that everyone's thrilled with the event. I mean, it's no good in having this and we can't get people to come back if they're not excited. In fact, my staff said to me today, knock wood, they said we haven't had one complaint. That's our goal. I don't want to hear one complaint from anybody. Meaning, and not like I don't want to hear a complaint. I want people to be so thrilled that they're not even saying, the room was a little cold, this. I don't want to hear any. And so, that's one. And then others are revenue goals, of course, things like that. So we have a couple goals, but then the rest are all the actions we have to take to make those things happen. So we do have a task list, don't get me wrong, but all the tasks are designed so that we know we'll get that result.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yeah, first I think this is probably the best session of the whole event. So
thank you.
I mean, the question I have is that, you talked about a standardized plan that you repeat again and again, and I think these are wonderful, excellent, personalized tips for motivating yourself. My question actually is, how do you translate at an organizational level so that you take everybody with you? What I typically find is that you could be the best player in town in the organization, but you're so far ahead that people cannot just give up. So, I mean, the question is, what do you recommend translating this system to an organizational level? Because that's when you become effective as a whole organization.
Well, you got to fix you first. You can't fix the world with broken hands. I don't know who said that quote, but you can't teach something to somebody you don't do yourself or know yourself.
Correct.
So the first thing you've got to do is learn it yourself. And here's another thing, guys. One of the best things way to learn something is to teach it to somebody else. So then this is a quick tip. If you have an employee or a tech or somebody who goes off and takes training, tell them they got to come back and teach it to the rest of the organization. They'll be more engaged because they're going to know they have to teach it, okay? So first off, get yourself right, figure out your systems, and the way they see you working and engaging with them, like always asking, what's our outcome? What are the results we're trying to produce today? What are the results we're trying to produce on this client call? What are the results we're trying to produce this quarter? By constantly setting goals and talking about specific goals, they know that that's how you think and you organize. And then going back, it was like what Patrick Houlihan talked about yesterday. You got to go back, you got to plan, brief, and the debrief process too. What worked, what didn't work? How do we make it better? Go again, and doing that faster and faster.
So perhaps my question is, I think that's a great tip. I'm just trying to understand, for example, when we went to that, the session which was all the fighter jet pilots, they all were extremely great players, and they had to know how to work together.
Right.
So in a way, the level of discipline that it required to fly a jet was pretty similar.
Right.
In most organizations, you tend to have people with different skill set at different levels,
Okay.
and each one takes a role. So the motivation to be successful is highest at the ownership level. And
Shouldn't be,
obviously-
wait, you just said something that's a belief that you have. What did you just say again?
I'm just saying is that typically...
No, what did you just say? That was a belief that you have.
Well, I agree.
The highest level of motivation you said is in the CEO level.
Well, and that's what you tend to eventually see things. And I'm
No,
saying...
is that a belief? My team doesn't think, my team is every bit as motivated as I am.
Right, and I think the point I'm saying is if you know there's a problem, then how do you fix it? That's the question, actually.
You get rid of them. I don't think, if they're not motivated, you don't motivate, I can't motivate Andrea, Andrea, she's amazing. I don't say to Andrea, get everything perfect. Andrea puts that demand on herself. I don't stand over Andrea and say, there better not be any mistakes. That's a standard she lives by. That's the pride she takes in her work and in herself. And you know what? If she wasn't working for me, she'd do it for somebody else because that's Andrea. So I make sure I have Andrea's on the team. I make sure I have Nicole's on the team and Jeff's on the team. People who, no matter where they would go, would do the best that they could because that's in their DNA to be the best. That's the standard that they work with. Now, they might not be running an organization. That's not their skill level, but we're not talking about, we're talking about passion and motivation and drive and the willingness to say, hey, you know what, I can be better. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
That's a personal thing. That's personal. You got to find people who are like that. A Walmart greeter can have that passion. They might not know how to run Walmart, but in that role, they're an A player because they bring that to that role.
Okay, I guess, that's a lot of good information to digest, so thanks so very much.
Of course it is, yeah. It's a complex question. I don't know. It's not, that's, by the way, my job is just to cause these problems. You got to figure them out.
Yeah, so I came to this session looking how can be more relaxed, how can I have more time, how can be more focused. But now I got 50 more things to do.
All right, wait a minute. Let me help you out. What would
Yeah.
be one result that you would like to achieve?
So be more relaxed, have more time, more focused. So
All
now
right, wait. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. How will you know when you're more relaxed? Give me something specific.
When I'm more focused, I have only one or
How
two
will you
things
know?
to do.
How will you know when you're more focused?
When there is not much things to do, there is less distraction, not 5 books to read.
You're chasing a false god. You will never achieve that. There's 500 books to read. Have you looked at Amazon? You need to. Okay, so no, this is serious. You have set a standard for yourself that you haven't quantified what it is yet. You will never achieve something that you don't know how to achieve. You've got to say, here's when I know I'm relaxed, when this. All right? And you can decide to be that way right now. You can decide, look, I'm not saying you had to read those books. I just put them up there if you care to read more. You don't have to read those books. You have to realize that. I don't have to read those books. I just gave you enough to go on right now. All right? The goal is you've got to decide if that is an important goal, you've got to be able to quantify it. How will I know when I'm more relaxed and focused? How will I know? And you've got to decide that for yourself, and then you set up your world so that you can achieve that. Does that make sense? I don't hear clarity for you on what that is.
Well, I feel like I got, another so many things to do, like a disease, so
Okay.
that's what I think.
Okay. Well, again, sit down and focus. What are on the key results you want to achieve? And the next question is, how will you know when you're achieving it? This is important. How will you know? So it's good to say a result. Sometimes numbers, like, okay, we generate $1 million in sales. That's a result we can easily quantify. But if you have a goal of, I want more free time, you can't just say, well, I want to have more free time. How much free time do you want specifically? And then you schedule that in, and you make it happen. And now you can say, and if that still doesn't give you the feeling, see, I think what you want is the feeling of that. And that you decide on. I can get overwhelmed right now in this moment because I can sit here and I can think of all the things I've got to do next week when I go back. Or I can choose to just relax, and I can choose to focus on you and answering your question and trying to help you, and then I feel much more relaxed and calm. And one of the things you have to learn how to do is how to be calm in the middle of a storm, in the middle of a hurricane. You've got to be in the eye of the hurricane where it's calm. Because there's always, if you don't want much to do, retire. There's always, you can always, I take joy in trying to expand the ability to do things, but I don't bring to it a spirit of, oh crap, I got more to do. I take excitement, I take passion in it. I say, how can I be even better? How can I get even more done? How can I get these results faster? And I bring excitement, so when I'm in those states, it's an exciting feeling I have. It's not a, oh crap feeling I have. And I know why I'm doing it. I'm driven because I have a vision for my life. And I know it's a blessing to me. I don't look at it like it's a negative. No, I'm not saying there's not days when I'm like not grumpy. There's days when I'm downright grumpy. And I set my interval timer and I allow myself 10 minutes to be grumpy. But there's no profit in that. There's no profit in feeling downtrodden and overwhelmed and put upon and pissed off because you got so much to do. There's no profit in that. And guess what? You made it happen. You made all the choices in your life that put you exactly where you are. So instead of feeling bad about it, how about thinking, how can I come to this and feel excited about this? How can I work today and feel relaxed and enjoy the process? Instead of saying, I've got just so much to do, so much to do. What you're doing then is you're focusing on your to-do list. You're not focusing on the result. Does that make sense?
We'll think about it.
Okay. Let's go over here to this mic.
Thanks for everything you've and the value you've created this weekend, Robin. I really
Is that you,
do.
Dan? It's hard to see you. I'm sorry. Yeah, okay.
It's me.
Okay, it's you. Awesome.
Just one resource real quick, Getting Things Done by David Allen.
Yep, very good.
And I follow a blog, Michael Hyatt, michaelhyatt.com, and he lives and breathes by him. And that I'm actually just downloaded it to my Kindle. I haven't read the book yet, but he's always saying that's a great book. But I just wanted to throw another thing out there, and I think it goes a little bit to his point. As you know, I've coached with Garrett Gunderson for a couple of years, and last year I was on an Awakened Spirit retreat in the mountains of Utah. 3 days, everything turned off, no cell phone even with me. And I got an amazing clarity about something he created, or he pushes, and that is doing in the morning what's called a power hour. And it's spending time getting up, focusing on exercise, on health. I've hired a health coach and various things like that to help make you a completely better person. And you mentioned it a couple of times, but it's so incredibly important for you to focus on yourself and grow yourself and your family and everything around you, because doing those become income-producing activities. And I know I was a night owl, and my health coach, Jason, looked me in the eyes. He was on the mountain with us, and he said, Dan, you are killing yourself, because I was up till 2, 3 in the morning, and then I was getting up and not getting into the office till 10 or 11. And as a result of that, I got an accountability partner for a workout, and now I'm up at 5 a.m. every morning. We're at the gym at 6, and I'm in the office by 8:30. And the amount of productivity that has increased by working on myself, by being grateful, spending time each day looking at people and thanking them, figure out somebody to thank, just one a day. It makes a massive difference in the business.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, very good for you. Yeah. Butch?
Robin, can you just give a brief description of your daily planning routine?
Okay, well, there's things that I have to do in my business over and over again. So I have to, write the marketing strategy brief, the tech times. I've got to do the payroll. I've got to look at our numbers. I've got to go over KPIs. There's certain things that I do all the time. What I do in advance is I block out time in my schedule, and it's recurring. So it's done the same time frame every month, every week. So it's a schedule. So I take things that I know I need to do, and I block time. Then there's room after that. And so what I do and I do this weekly, I do it daily. I'm always asking myself, what do I have to do? What's the result I need to get done today? What do I have to get done this week? What do I got to get done this month? What do I have? So I'm always looking ahead, and I actually physically block the time in my schedule. Now, here's the key thing. Block time for things that are important but not urgent. So meetings and doing certain things you don't like to do. I typically tend to schedule those in the morning when I'm fresh, because if I schedule them towards the end of the day, my brain's tired and I'm just not going to be as efficient, and I already don't want to do it, so it's just not going to get done. But if I don't get something done that I had planned on getting done because for whatever reason something happens, and it does, I don't just ignore that. I go to my schedule, I look at this block of time, and I move it to another part, and then I start saying reprioritization. Is this more important than that? And I'm constantly juggling priorities. All right, so if that makes sense. So every day, every week, I know exactly what I need to get done that day. I monitor more on a daily basis because things are happening quick, and sometimes I get things done faster than I thought, and I have more time, and so what can I work on next? But I know what I can work on next because I already know the things I have to get done.
Do you do more of your planning in the morning or like
I
the
do
night
it all the
before, or
time.
just all the time?
I'm constantly looking. Obviously we set quarterly goals. Now my quarter because we extended it to boot camp. So my quarter, if you will, is now until the end of this month. And then I'm going to plan the next quarter, and then I'll plan the next initiative. So I put in, we have annual goals. I have quarterly goals. All right. So and then there's key initiatives. So if my goals typically tend to be revenue, profits, number of members, that sort of thing. Then I say, what are the key initiatives I have to do in order to achieve those goals? And I pick like 3 to 5 big key initiatives. Or one, like this quarter, the big key initiative, guess what, was boot camp. That's it. Because if we nail this, there's a whole lot that happens. So I don't think, when I say 3 to 5, I think 5 is even kind of a lot. It's like 1 to 3 big key initiatives for that quarter we will get done. And then there's things going on all the time, like we have our newsletters going out, marketing campaigns going out, and search engine optimization going on. We got all these other things, but there's people managing that. I'm just looking at the numbers. And I can tell if it's healthy or not because I can look at the numbers.
Okay, thanks.
That's about as scientific as it gets, yes.
Couple of questions, Robin. This is my first exposure to your teaching, and you've referred a couple of times to orange cone time. Can you just give me?
Yeah, I forget. Okay, so here's you know what? We're going to take this question, and guys, you have to get me at a break. This is going to be the final question because we have to end on time. I can't go over on a schedule about being productive, right? Anyway, so when I was a one-man woman. Makes sense. What did I just say? That didn't even make sense.
I hope you still are a one-man woman.
Anyway, yes, I think I still am. Yes. Okay, so when I was a one-man I can't stop saying it. When I worked by myself, and it was just me, my first hire, I worked in, I had a big bonus room in my house, which was, it wasn't big, but it was enough to hold 2 desks. So, and it wasn't that, it wasn't that big when I really think about it. It was about as big as the stage. all right? So when I would get down there, I'd be working, and my employee would come in during the day, and she'd be sitting right behind me, and we're like right there. So typically in the morning is when I'm writing, and that's when I'm doing my most focused work, okay? I like hit the ground running in the morning. And so she would come in and say, hey, how are you? What'd you have for breakfast? What'd you do last night? Hey, I worked out, doing the water cooler kind of conversation and whatnot. Or she started like during the day, since I'm right there, she would just, if she had a question, she'd say, hey, Robin, blah, 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 blah. Now, she wasn't doing it to be evil or wrong or anything else like that. But one morning, she had interrupted me. I was in the middle of a thought. And when I'm writing copy, particularly sales copy, when you kind of get an idea and it's not quite there, and she walked in and interrupted me, and I lost it. And I was like, oh, I was so frustrated. I thought, I got to figure out a nice way of telling her to stop talking to me. So I was teaching a plyometrics class at the time, and my gym bag happened to be sitting next to me, and we had these orange cones that I would set up, and you run drills with the orange cones. So when she was sitting there, she had interrupted me, and I looked down, I see this orange cone, I just grab it, and I say, you see this orange cone? When this thing is on the floor behind me, that is your signal not to talk to me. Don't look at me. I don't want anything to do. I don't care what's going on. That thing's there. You do not talk to me. Period. Don't even make sound. Don't play the radio. Because we had to, because I was working in a room right with her. I couldn't escape. And it worked really well. So that became orange cone time when I'm working on something really important, and so it's kind of stuck. And I'll tell you a funny story. I was, as my business grew, I actually moved it into the basement of the house I'm in, and I had two employees at that time, and I had my own room. And so the orange cone still sat outside I had a separate room, but I had the orange cone there. And I was on the phone, I was consulting with these clients, we're having a very intense conversation, and I'm completely focused, so to the point where I didn't even realize there were sirens going off because there was a tornado in the area apparently. And I'm so focused on what I'm doing, all of a sudden the door opens and one of my staff walks in and stands in front of me, and I look at her like, are you freaking crazy? You just violated orange cone, right? And she says, I know the whole orange cone thing and everything, but there is a tornado that has touched down in the area. The sirens are going off. We're going into the basement. We thought we ought to come get you. So this is what I did. This is a true story. I told the person on the phone, I said, hold on for a minute. I have something to deal with. I put them on hold, and I said, look, when you see the tornado coming and it's heading then come get me. Until then, I'm on a call. And I went right back onto it. Which is probably incredibly stupid, I know, but that's how focused it is. So that's the story of the orange cone.